I guess they're co-opted. I guess they're afraid of retaliation if they speak out. But according to their study, Japan lost $11.7 billion in North America from 87 through 1990 in autos. Think of that, in 3 years. They lost $11.7 billion. We don't have the 91 numbers yet. That comes as a surprise to the average American who thinks Japan must be making a ton of dough in this market. But no, they lost almost $12 billion. Now, how can they stand that kind of pain? Well, it's no problem. During the same 3 years, they made $36.4 billion in their own protected home market. You see, they operate from a sanctuary. They have almost no competition at home, and they won't allow any foreign competitor to be a factor in their market. In total, all foreign automakers from all over the world have 3% of the Japanese market. In Europe, foreign companies have 15%. In the U.S., they have a whopping 35% of the car and truck market. But when you operate from a sanctuary, when your market's closed and the other guy's is wide open, that does give you some neat, really neat options. You can gouge your own consumers if they'll stand for it, and guess what? The Japanese consumers stand for it. You keep all of your people employed, and you use some of those profits to grab big chunks of the other guy's market. And that's what's happening. They're simply taking about 1/3 of their enormous profits from their protected sanctuary at home and subsidizing their market share grab here. When I was a kid in school young, that was ugly mercantilism at its worst. But the hell with that. It's a good strategy. They get full employment. They get huge profits overall, and when they control this market, and they're getting closer every day, they'll call all the shots, and believe me, they'll get their investment back, but in spades. Sure, American consumers get a break for a while, but Japanese consumers get an even bigger one. You see, they have all the jobs. Remember, the lousiest consumer is an unemployed consumer. One way they give Americans a break is through dumping, and we have laws against that. It's obvious that it's going on, but it's hard as hell to prove, because their real costs are camouflaged within their Keiretsu arrangements, groups. And even when you can prove it, you often say, why in the hell bother? The Commerce Department found Japan guilty of dumping minivans last month. And Toyota immediately declared victory, because our government said Toyota was not cheating by much. They can break our laws, but only by a little. So that's okay. Now, I'm sure Toyota expects the same slap on the wrist Toshiba got a few years ago for selling submarine technology to the Soviets. That's way back when there were Soviets, remember? The case isn't closed, though. Now Commerce wants to look at those Japanese books and see if the actual costs they provided are as high as they claim. And if they are real, then Japan's reputation for efficient, low-cost production will go right down the toilet. But so far, the Japanese would have to be stupid not to keep breaking our laws, and the Japanese are not stupid. And now, the EEC, that's Europe, has capped Japan's sales there at 16% through the end of the century. Now, there's a real sweetheart deal. Maybe for Europe, not for us. And Japan never complained, by the way. It was sort of an overnight story. That leaves the U.S. and Canada as the only free market left for autos on the entire planet. The only dumping ground left for Japan's excess auto capacity. And man, do they have it. The Japanese have 7 million units of excess auto capacity right now, and that's 75% of the total overcapacity of the world. And all of that, with Europe out of the way, is now targeted, where do you think? Right at us. But the problem's even deeper than dumping and targeting and scoffing at our laws. It's time that we came to understand in this country that Japan's economic structure is as different from ours as ours is from Cuba's. Oh, it has all the trappings of free enterprise, but man, it's different. I mean, it is fundamentally different. Their closed home market, business-government collaboration through MITI to penetrate foreign markets, an export-import bank set up to fund that market penetration, the Keiretsu. The reason we use the Japanese word, there's no translation in English. We don't know what the hell Keiretsu is. We should find out pretty quick, though. Banks over there holding most of the corporate equity. Deliberate inefficiencies like distribution and agriculture. The second-class status of the consumer, and even a form of government which is really more of a bureaucracy than a democracy. All of these not only make Japan different, many of them are patently illegal in our country. They have a managed economy in Japan, pure and simple. It may be economically irrational by everything we learned in school. But it works, and it works well for one simple reason. Because they have the giant American market as a dumping ground, and it's their pressure relief valve. We don't have anything like that. Among other things, that means they don't have recessions. They banned them there, I guess. I don't know by law, but they don't have them. They're just not allowed there. The only time they've had negative growth since we helped them recover from the big war, the World War II, it was in 1974, but that was due to the OPEC oil shock, not the business cycle. We are in our 8th recession since the war, but Japan has never had one. It has been immune. Now let me ask you, you think we'd be in a recession in the U.S. right now if we had a completely open market, roughly twice the size of ours, to sell into, and if we had an endless web of formal and informal barriers that kept those people out of our market? Do you think really we'd be closing the plants and laying the people off now? Recessions are bad news for America and terrible news for this city, Detroit. But U.S. recessions have been terrific news for Japan. And that's when they've grabbed most of their markets. Over the past few years, we Americans have not only had to deal with the recession, but remember, we had a war, too. They haven't had either of those burdens to worry about in Japan. It's been business as usual. And that included grabbing another 9 share points, share of market, of our car market, while we weren't looking. Think of that. That's what they've gained since car sales began to soften here in mid-'88. 9 full points since that time. It happens every time our economy hits a wall. OPEC won in the early 70s. They got 4 quick points during that crisis. OPEC 2, 79 to 81. I can never forget. That's the one that almost killed Chrysler, by the way, so that's indelible in my head. They got 11 points in less than 3 years. Think of that. And now 9 more points when we hit our 3rd recession plus Desert Storm. It does seem to be a pattern. They gain a point a year in the good years, but they gain a point a quarter in the bad years. 10 points in every recession. Now, that's a recipe for taking the whole U.S. auto market in a couple of more downturns. There won't be anything left. And I, for one, am fed up hearing from the Japanese, and I might say some Americans, too, that all our problems in this industry, all of our problems, are our own damn fault. We do not have idiots running General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, or our suppliers. And our workers are not lazy and stupid. Now, I'm not going to do a commercial here, but take a look at the new Dodge Viper at the show, at the new Grand Cherokee, at the new LH cars coming next summer. I'll put them against anything in the world. It's too damn bad that this trip to Japan on unfair trade is going to obscure the fantastic products not only coming from Chrysler, but the whole auto industry in '92. By the way, that's why I took this speech, to kick off the auto show, and here I'm talking about damn trade again. So I've been co-opted. We should be talking about how good our cars are today. And yeah, the Japanese make good products too, and they're the economic force to be reckoned with in the world today. But let's not get too impressed. Any one of the big 3 would be geniuses too if we operated from the same closed sanctuary, if we had a huge wide open market like the United States to sell into, if the government ran interference for us, if we could prohibit, which we can't, our dealers from selling foreign cars like they do, if we had company unions and sweetheart deals with our banks and our suppliers, and if American consumers wouldn't squawk about paying 6 times the world price for rice and $12,000 more than the U.S. sticker price for a Jeep. And we'd also be heroes if we had the same cost of capital over all these years. The cost of capital in Japan has historically been about half of ours. By the way, it's about equal now. But you can bet that's a temporary problem that they're going to correct. Chrysler just spent $1 billion each in a new tech center and a new inner-city assembly plant. If I were in Japan at the time I contracted for these facilities, I could have built both of them for the same $1 billion. So let's not be so hard on ourselves. The Japanese aren't geniuses, except when it comes to manipulating our own laws and our own market for their own ends. I picked up Forbes magazine a couple of years ago and saw a quote that I think tells it all. It was by Hideo Morita. He's the son of Akio Morita of Sony. His father, as you know, likes to lecture us as poor, dumb Americans on what it takes to succeed in business these days. But here's what his own son said, quote, "My father's generation knew that they were playing by different rules from the West when it came to trade, but they pretended that they did not understand the rules, and that's why they won." That's from the kid. My kid said that. He got my attention. By the way, I met Mr. Morita this week in Tokyo. Heinz Sprecher here made sure I saw him. I saw him 3 times, in fact. I never met the guy. So they said he was outspoken.